everybody. Thank you very much for coming along to the Raith Rovers Sports Director Hustings. Amazingly, we have 4 candidates, which is the most we've ever had, which is great. So I'm sure we'll hear a lot of good ideas. So the format of the evening is basically the candidates will get to do opening remarks for 7 minutes. All 4 of them will get a chance in the order they'll do. And if you put your hand up when I say your name so people know who you are. The order I'm going to do that is David Proudfoot. Second will be Paul Gilfillan. Then third will be Bill Gilby. And fourth will be Andy Mill. And then we'll have a Q&A for however long as many you want to ask questions. We do have a number of questions being submitted online, so I'll feed them in just in the middle of the discussion. And then we'll have closing remarks for 2 minutes from each of the candidates, just to sort of sum up the evening. So if you just want to sit back and listen to the candidates first of all, and think of any questions you want to ask when we get to the Q&A bit. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to David to kick us off with his opening remarks.
Thanks, Stephen. A couple of apologies. First of all, one, my voice. I'm just back from a school trip with 20 kids for 2 weeks, and I picked up the obligatory cold, so I'm a bit nasal and a bit hoarse, but you just have to stick with me. And secondly, I didn't realise it wasn't a formal occasion, so apologies for overdressing slightly, or these guys underdressing. Thanks for letting me be here today. This is a new one for me. It's exciting, and I think the importance of having a due process and a bit of transparency in this particular election is kind of vital to the prestigious role that we're all applying for and hoping to be part of. So thank you for that. It's clear that an extraordinary amount of work has taken place between the Trust and the various supporter clubs over the last 20 years, pretty much the 20 years that I remember as being a Raith Rovers fan. And it's thanks to the hundreds of volunteers, a lot of you in the room tonight, that we've come so far, and we have such a solid place on the Raith Rovers board now, and kind of have such an influence on the club that we all love. So we're at another pivotal moment, I suppose, in the evolution of the supporters director's role. And I hope that the discussions tonight are open and honest and positive, and that we all go away feeling a bit more reassured that our shared passion for this club is not only everlasting, but can be harnessed and channeled in the right ways over the next few years. For me, it's not about debating or arguing with each other. We're all singing from the same hymn sheet. We all want to do the best thing for Raith Rovers, so I hope it's a really positive experience. Although I'm a kind of independent or outsider candidate, not really part of some of the main supporters groups, I suspect I'm not really in the running for the vote, and I've kind of accepted that over the past couple of weeks. But I still think it's important to be here and be part of the experience, and be part of, have an opportunity to speak to you guys and hear what you guys are saying to us. So that's why I didn't pull out, and I'm still semi-hopeful that I've got a little chance. But I was really reassured reading Andy, Bill, Paul's statements, and I thought they were absolutely brilliant. They were heartfelt, and they were positive, and they were full of good ideas. So no matter where the ball falls, I think anybody in this group will do a really good job for the Raith Rovers supporters group. I would say that the 4 statements had very similar messages, and what I would say is there's 3 or 4 points that are pretty much aligned across the board, and I'm hoping that mirrors what the kind of populace and the main body of fans are thinking. First point I would like to pick on is the communication between the club and its supporters and how vital that is. Obviously it's been vital throughout the years, but it's something that's changing all the time, and one of my focuses would be on how we interact and engage the young people of Kirkcaldy and the surrounding areas. That's critical to, I think, a short-term plan to get bums on seats next season, and it's also pretty major in sustaining this club over the next generation. So my focus would probably be, or one of my main points would be on how we engage the young people of Kirkcaldy, and there was a discussion earlier on about how do we get them involved early on so that they don't get kind of blinkered and blindfolded by the big teams. And I've said here that as you know, I'm working with 11 to 18-year-olds on a daily basis, and you know, I would say I kind of got to know them pretty much inside out over the past 8 years of teaching. And one of the first questions I asked them is, oh, who do you support? And I work in Edinburgh, so I'm expecting to hear Hibs, Hearts, and unfortunately Rangers and Celtic, but often it's Man United, Celtic, Chelsea, Real Madrid. And I suppose that's the result of the kind of massive TV exposure that's all they know. Social media, YouTube, playing computer games. Now, we can't kid ourselves. We're not going to be able to change that overnight. That's just kind of ingrained in where society is just now. What I would say is I think there are opportunities that we could tap into to try and entice them back into, or entice them into their local club. Things like Snapchat stories, things like Instagram feeds that are going straight into their phones and straight into their minds and their lives. And that's just something they're so used to. And what that would do, I think, is allow them to identify with the club and understand what the club is, rather than just the kind of brainwashing that they maybe get in the mainstream media. So there's a couple of ideas. Other ideas, they play a lot of online games, and they're constantly playing online games. There's Fortnite, Shell Shock, and FIFA, and I don't know if how familiar you are with these games. These are online communities where they group together. Now, if we can group them together with the badge of Wraith Rovers, then again, it's giving them the identity, a sense of belonging to the club, which I don't think exists at the moment. It's just a little bit disparate. They may come along to the odd game or two, but do they really sign up to what Wraith Rovers is all about? And if we don't do that, I suppose my fear would be in 20, 30 years' time, when I'm maybe the age of some of you people, that we won't have an audience though. I'm right. And my fear is that when the next generation coming through, there isn't the group of great people who care so much to be here. And we have to be wary of that we get it right now, because if we don't get it right now, then what's the sustainability of this club over the next 20, 30 years? And that's my mindset, certainly. Second point is the playing surface. Contentious as it is, it's happening, we can see it, and with it, we've got to embrace it as an opportunity to really bring in the community. Now, I think it will boost revenue over time, and I think it will be a popular place for people of Kirkcaldy to come. What I would say, the caveat is, we've got to get it right, because if we don't get it right, kind of from day one, we put people off. And I'm a big believer in if you're going to do something, then you get it right as soon as you possibly can, or else people turn away from it. And I think John, in his interview, was correct in saying that we need to have achievable targets, and we need to manage expectation. So I think it's going to be a great resource, whether we like grassroots stuff or not, but it needs to be managed in the right way, and I think we have to control that over the next few months and years potentially. I'm a huge believer in boys playing football, and anybody playing football, but I take all the school teams. I've organised 28 games this year. I've organised the Scottish Independent Schools Cup final at Falkirk Stadium, unfortunately, and the international game, again at Falkirk Stadium, both of which I would have loved and asked if we could play here, but obviously with playoffs and pitch situation, that was turned down. Next year that might be a completely different situation. So I'm part of organising all of these events, and that's my strength, I think, is the attention to detail and the kind of determination to make these things happen. The third point is liaison between the community. I know I've just probably put you all off by talking about age, but I think it's important that these lines of communication are reliable and robust and are open. I'm not part of a supporters group, which means I'm completely unbiased, so we get to a point where I'm not influenced by other groups. I want to hear everybody's opinion, and I would take that on board, as I do in my everyday life and my job managing people, and try and put the best kind of pitch forward to the management team, which I suppose would be the board of directors. And I think I do that well. I think I communicate well in those situations. I think I'm good at analysing situations and listening to people, that's something I've developed over the past 10 years of my career, and it's something I hope to bring to Wraith Rovers. Kind of finally, no matter what the outcome of this election, I think it's all really important that we ensure that we all help the club move forward. I've kind of had a wee go at slogans like Roaring Back and Let's Make America Great Again, because I'm kind of sick of hearing these slogans that don't really mean very much without any kind of substance to them. And I've just said, I think it's important that we do kind of freshen things up a little bit. I think it's important that we do get it right from top to bottom, no matter how big or small the issue may be. I think if we all work together and share our expertise, and we have somebody organising it and volunteering with lots of hard work and devotion and strong communication lines, then hopefully we can see it through the next year or two, because it's going to be tough. It's been tough, and it's going to continue to be tough. I've said on here, it's no dig at Barry, but I'm hoping for a younger, braver, more attacking side on the pitch next season, and off the pitch, I just hope we can do everything we possibly can to make this club work again.
Thanks very much, David. I'd like to invite Paul to make his opening remarks.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, David. My name's Paul Gofillin. 53, lived in Kirkcaldy most of my life, I still do. I'm a season ticket holder, I sit in the middle of the south stand, so you're asked to speak up a bit. Sit in the middle of the south stand, so I recognise a lot of faces here tonight. I used to be the programme editor, did that for a couple of seasons, so I am the not playing in the UEFA Cup next season guy. I also created the super sensational Sorroway Starks Park fanzine. That ran for a few seasons, won a couple of awards as well. A wee while ago. I trained and qualified as a management accountant in the 80s, and in the 90s I became a management consultant. And in the mid-90s I moved into HR, and I'm still in HR now, so I'm currently an HR director for the National Galleries of Scotland. So I look after art and paintings and statues and things. I've worked for the MOD, I've worked for a government agency, I've worked for RBS, Boo, I've worked for Sky, I've worked for Aegon, and National Galleries of Scotland is a charity, so I'm now in a charity sector, which is something different. So a wee bit of experience. My father would describe that as a checkered past. I would prefer to call that experience. I've worked with the Prince's Trust, I've been a business advisor there, working with young people, and I'm also an SFA qualified referee, although you might not think it to look at my physique. I've led people, teams in this continent and in others, teams of over 100 people at a time. I've worked in virtual financial services, and even now I couldn't tell you what the last company that I worked for sold, because everything was kind of ethereal and on the net. So I've kind of been around a wee bit. I understand business, I understand customer service, and I understand working for a cause that I believe in. That's why I came out of financial services, to find something I cared about. I can also explain the offside rule. So why am I putting myself through this? Nothing really inspires like disappointment and failure. And after the last 2 seasons, you know, some people have been threatening to rip down the knitting in their scarves, burn their season tickets, throw stones, just sit and complain about things. Over the last 2 seasons, some decisions and initiatives maybe haven't been explained as well as they might have been to the supporters. And I'm thinking about managerial backroom decisions, transfers, or loaning your best player to your opposition decisions, or maybe even sticking the striker in goals at an important away fixture decisions. And over the last 2 seasons, I think there's not been enough interaction between the support and the club. Other than we do have some forums, we have fan talk, which can be a wee bit reactive sometimes, or there's the slightly more balanced, I think, Pie and Bovril. I don't know if how many of you use these things. And Pie and Bovril was where a former director may or may not have had a user profile and may or may not have left cryptic messages. So there are ways and means of getting the messages out there. So it's a time of change. David's referenced the pitch, but it's always a time of change. Nothing remains the same. The pitch is going in, players are leaving, hopefully new players coming in. I could do seeing some new faces soon. So I thought about a famous quote from a famous Wraith supporter, and that's Mahatma Gandhi. And he said, "Be the change you want to see." So I want to be part of the change that I want to see in the club. And do what? What will I do? Well, I'd like to give you a list of things that I'll be doing, but I can't. If I'm honest, I was slightly disappointed not to be able to speak to the board before tonight, and when I was putting my bid together, to find out what their intentions are and what their plans are. And maybe we'll get a chance to do that if I'm successful. So as a consequence of that, I can't really list you all the things that I'm going to do, because I don't know how much headroom the board will give this role, and how much they'll listen to what the supporters have got to say if this works properly, and how prepared they are to act on these kind of things. I work for an organisation that's trying to be more audience-led and audience-focused and influenced than it has been in the past. And I know that doesn't work the same in a football club. But I think we could be more audience-influenced. And that's where commitment lies, that's where engagement lies. That's where more punters attend the games because they can't miss them, because this is their club, and you get that fear of missing out thing. And that's where punters put their hands up, or even in their pockets, to lend a hand, because this is their club. So I'll trust the board, and I'll give you some of the areas I'd like to work in. Another quote from another famous Rovers fan, Whitney Houston: "I believe that children are the future." Well, they kind of are. They're future season ticket holders, and they're the people that will be buying the state buys at half-time. Let's give them a reason to bug their parents to bring them to Starks Park. Someone already referenced Partick Thistle, father. Volunteer groups. We've done some work with the Community Foundation and all the great work they do there, but like David, I'm not connected to anything else. So I'd like to work with more possibly new groups and see what people would like to do. Communication, you can always communicate better no matter where you are, what you're doing. Great strides, particularly Wraith TV, not just because Neil's standing here with a camera. Let's make more use of that. Merchandising. Anybody that's been to Somerset Park would have walked past the Ayr United club shop. I can't find things to buy in our club shop, so I'd like to have a look at what we sell and what would attract people. So I can't really apologise for these being a wee bit vague and ill-formed, but an important point of that is that this role as a supporter director, I think my agenda should be informed by the supporters. I shouldn't stand here and tell you all things I'm going to do. I would like to meet with supporters and talk to supporters and find out what it is that they want this support director to do. Where's their voice? How do they know if they're heard? What would they come up with if they're more involved? There's 4 of us sitting here tonight, which is a big turnout for candidates. How many more people are in this room or sitting in the stands when we play that want to be more involved, who want to do something, who've got something to give? We need to tap into that more. One thing I will say, if it is me, I want to be in the south stand on a Saturday. I want to be in the stand with a table, with a notebook and a pen, and I want to be talking to people. I want to be listening to people, taking notes, telling people what's going on, trying to explain things if I can, and then I'm going to sit in the south stand as well, in amongst the supporters, because I'm a supporter. And that way I can see and hear and feel what's going on, and bring that back more real to the club. I'd like to make more use of comms, as I've said, but I think that comms from the support director, Wraith TV, online, we talked about apps and things like that. There's lots of technology out there that we don't use at the moment for good reason, but let's look at more of it and see what we can do. So in summary, I'd like to change the role slightly and make sure it does what it says it does. Supporter director, elected by the supporters, and give them a voice and increase the engagement in this old club that we all love. And as my title on the Wall of Fame in the South Stand says, "Mon the Rovers." Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. I'd like to invite Bill Gilby to give his opening remarks.
Okay. Do you mind if I sit down, so long as you can hear me? Does that mean you're adjusting the camera, Neil?
No, I'll just zoom in a bit more.
Okay, there's one big issue that I want to get out here early on. First of all, I want to tell you about this. You can't see it for the back of the room, but it's some mud. It's mud that I scraped off the bottom of my son's boots when he was at the mascot at the Millennium Derby, 3-0 over the Pars. And this is my granddad's Supporters Club committee badge from the 1950s when he used to help run buses from Markinch, and he would regale me with tales about Alex James playing in the 1920s. So 4 generations of my family, but the more observant among you will have noticed that I haven't mentioned the 3rd one, which is my dad. And he is a member of the Dunfermline Hall of Fame. Not because he was a player, but because he was a club steward. He's the only person in our family like that. I wanted you to know about this dark secret. I mean, the family, we have had counselling, but it's just something we have to, it's just something we have to put up with, like being a Rovers supporter. As the other guys have alluded to, this isn't a typical election, because in the elections I've been involved in my work and elsewhere, they're often areas of conflict. You're trying to trip people up, you're trying to argue against their policies. But having read all the statements and knowing Andy as I do, and having met David and Paul tonight, we're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, so it does make the election very different. And I want to say outright that you know, if I'm lucky enough to win this, the first 3 people after the former, the other previous supporter directors that I'm going to speak to are these guys. And I hope that if one of them wins, they'll adopt the same approach, because I think the 4 of us have all got something to offer to the club. The bottom line for me is to see the points that I put in my election statement, some of which come from me, some of which come from other supporters. What I want to happen is for those things to be implemented. Ideally by me, if not by one of these 3, or by someone else, and I'll help as a volunteer. That's what I'm about. It's not about being on the board per se. In summary, what I'm about, it's around communication, organisation, and our resource. So it's about 2-way communications, both directions, between the club and its supporters, between the supporter director and the Wraith Forum, and also a big chunk of our electorate who aren't represented in the forum groups, the other season ticket holders. How can they have an increased voice and say in the future? I also think I've got some skills that would help improve the board's way of working, having a real plan for what they're going to do, not getting diverted, monitoring progress, and taking action when it's required. And the third thing, as I say, is about collaborating with the staff and the volunteers we've got and the volunteers we could have to make sure that the organisation works more effectively. And in my union career, 30 years, that's exactly what we had. In Unison, we had 1,200 full-time staff and 50,000 voluntary branch secretaries and shop stewards, and we worked together in partnership. Now, I'm not going to repeat that checklist of items in my statement. I assume you've read all 4 and you've come with questions, and I look forward to the chance to answer them. And I think, you know, if this was a job interview, you'd be looking for evidence to back up the claims that each of the candidates are making. Close friends of mine, people I've worked with, know what I can do, know what my capacity is, know my problem-solving skills. So, and I find it quite difficult to talk about that myself. So what I thought I would do was tell you what my old boss, Rodney Bickerstaff, the man that got you the national minimum wage, although it's not high enough. This is what he said about me last year, not long before he died. He said, "Your skill in organising was what kept the national effort on course and trackable, something that was way beyond my ability. If you were on the case, I always relaxed, assuming that you'd sized up the issue at hand, deconstructed it, left nothing to chance, set out the priorities for successful action on behalf of the members. The safest pair of hands, methodical, hard-working, delivering to deadlines, trying to look round corners, you must have found any lesser job a walkover. A fixer is too crude a term for the way you prepared people and won them over to the obvious solutions you developed. People management seemed to come easily to you, whereas all I ever reached was level 3 charm offensive." And then he said, "No, to sum it up, what you're about is organisation out of chaos." So that meant a lot to me, and I hope you take it in the spirit in which I've read it out tonight. I do believe in continuous improvement, not standing still, and I also believe that ordinary people, whether they're folks such as ourselves, the staff in the office, the players, they're given a chance, they can do better. And they've usually got solutions. It's just that they've never been asked about them before. And that's why I believe that problems need to be tackled, not tolerated. And that's what I said in my statement. I think we need to address the culture of tolerating failure, accepting the world as it is, putting up with things because we think we can't change them. We can change things if we set our mind to it and think about creative ways of dealing with these issues. Now, I can't prove it, but I think acceptance of that kind of failure seeps into football players as well. And if you think about our performances against Brecon at the end of last season, and the game of 3 halves against Alloa this season, I think it does have an effect. So we need to make the organisation qualitatively better and different, and that will have an impact on our players. Finally, longer term, I think we need a simplified ownership structure. Ideally, us owning the club. And the balance needs to be rejigged so that the supporters have a greater stake than they do at the moment, the kind of diminished role they have with the takeover. And that means learning lessons from the likes of Hearts and St Mirren and, yes, Dunfermline. And to finally come to an end, I just want to say I will support whoever wins this election. And if I win it, I'll be looking for the help of these 3 guys and other people in this room. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bill. Finally, I'd like to ask Andy Mill to give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome this opportunity to address you all tonight. It's encouraging that on this occasion we have 4 candidates standing, all of whom are very capable, and that's been backed up by the previous 3 statements. For those that don't know me, my name is Andy Mill, and I've been a Raith Rovers supporter for many years, ever since we moved to Kirkcaldy from Buckhaven when I was 7. I too have a confession to make, however. My first footballing memory was watching East Fife at Bayview, taken there by my granddad. Having survived that traumatic experience, it was Raith Rovers from me from then on. As with many people associated with the club, supporting Raith Rovers is like an emotional roller coaster. We have had to endure many difficult times, both on and off the pitch, and many supporters have wavered when faced with such trials. Enduring the low points, though, enables us to celebrate even more when we are successful, and we have enjoyed great success on occasion. I joined the Raith Rovers 200 Club nearly 20 years ago, and soon became more involved, serving on the committee in various roles. Along with many others, we were actively involved during Reclaim the Rovers. That was a perfect example of what we as supporters can achieve through collective action and planning, which ultimately led to the survival of the football club and the creation of the position that we are contesting. I decided then that I wanted to become more involved and to assist Raith Rovers whenever possible. At that time, the 200 Club shared the Raith Suite, where we are tonight, with hospitality, which restricted us to what we could achieve. Hospitality were in here, 200 Club was in there was a partition over there. It wasn't really working at all. Several years ago, we were decanted into what was the supporters club shop in the South Stand. Turnbull Hutton, great guy, we met with him prior to this taking place. I argued vociferously that we should forget about hospitality at that time and convert this area into either a 200 Club or a supporters club bar. But Turnbull was wanting his hospitality, and he got his way. When we moved downstairs into where we are at the moment, it was a complete blank canvas. But within a few months, we converted this into a comfortable lounge bar where our members and guests can enjoy a refreshment prior to and after the game. Again, we have an example of what the collective efforts of fans can achieve. All the building work was carried out and funded by our members. It's not ideal for those that have been there. Space is at a premium and it can get quite busy. But this season we have been able to donate a total of £27,000 to the club, and that's something I'm particularly proud of. The point I'm making is that with effective leadership, a clear strategy, lots of effort and enthusiasm, we can achieve so much. If elected, I would aim to improve the lines of communication between the fans and the board. Everybody's touched on that. I would make myself available to listen to fans' concerns, especially on match days. I've looked to expand and develop voluntary working groups within the club, develop and promote fundraising initiatives. I would liaise and consult with the Wraith Forum, assist the board of directors in the formulation, planning and execution of strategy and policies, help promote greater links with the community groups with a view to increasing attendances, and I would represent the club in a positive and professional manner. This list isn't exhaustive, and there are many more ideas that will be raised and areas that require attention. I retired 7 years ago after a 30-year career in the fire service. I served at various locations throughout Fife, finishing as a crew manager at Methil Fire Station. On numerous occasions I acted up to watch manager to cover for sickness and holidays. I gained a lot of transferable skills in the course of my work, organising training programmes, holiday rotas, keeping the men busy, because 12 bored firemen is a very lethal combination. Let me tell you, mischief then follows. I was a union rep for the Fire Brigade Union for many years at branch and area level, in addition to attending national conference. I was secretary of the Kirkcaldy District Trades Council and have been involved in many local and national campaigns. So am I the right person for the job? Time will tell. Based on my work experience and my involvement in various organisations throughout the years, I feel I possess the necessary qualities needed in that, first of all, I have good organisational skills, a good attention to detail, I work well with others, I'm able to adapt readily to changing situations, I have a good working relationship with the staff and the current board of directors, I think I'm very approachable, and I live locally. I have attended Wraith Forum meetings for many years and have been involved in many other initiatives, for example organising the maintenance squad, the fans focus group. The maintenance squad is an area I'm particularly keen to develop. It gives fans a real opportunity to make a tangible difference whilst enhancing the fabric of the stadium. There is much work to be done. The ground staff do sterling work, but a few extra pair of hands would make a real difference to the place. I already spend a lot of my time at Starts Park, whether it's through the 200 Club or assisting around the ground. I'm content in the knowledge that I'm making a difference. There's lots of areas within the stadium that do need attention. There's probably a root and branch review required of all aspects of the club. I don't think that we're utilising the space that we have properly. Fundraising is a key to the survival of our club. The club actually depends on the funds that we raise. The ground staff, as I've said, do excellent work, but there's no real long-term plan. Hopefully the new facilities manager that will be appointed soon will remedy that. There's a lot of positives happening in the club, although if you read some social media that would appear not to be the case. The new synthetic pitch has polarised opinions. It's happening, as we can see from the state of the pitch just now, and I can understand where John Sim's coming from, that he wants this club to be utilised more and to be available more than just one day a fortnight, and I can appreciate that. Long term, the railway stand I would hope would be developed to accommodate a large social club, a social area. I'm very envious of small clubs like Peterhead, who have an absolutely brilliant social club. That could raise so much money over the course of a year. So hopefully that's something that we could look at in the future. And just enjoy being here. I enjoy being part of the fabric of the club. And if I'm successful, I hope that I can carry on the good work of our previous incumbent. And as Bill rightly says, there's a whole wealth of talent out there. It needs to be tapped, it needs to be focused. And I think if we can utilise the skills that people have within the club, then we can certainly take this club forward. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks guys for all your opening statements. You all slipped a wee bit into injury time, so when we get to the questions, I'd ask you if you could keep it brief to about a minute and a half at the most for an answer, because we want to get through as many questions as possible. So we're now in the sort of Q&A section of it, so I'll give you a question that we got submitted online just to kick off, and you can have a think about your own questions. Somebody was talking about the gap between, or a perceived gap between the directors and fans, particularly in the last 2 seasons, and they wanted to know what the candidates would do to bridge that gap between directors and fans. So I'll rotate who goes first. So Paul, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, as I said in my opening comments there, I want to be in the South Stand on match days. I want a table, I want a chair, I want a notepad and a pen, and I want to talk to people. So I plan to do that before the game and at half time, and depending on the result, maybe at full time. But I want to talk to people and hear what they're bothered about and what they're interested in. Similarly, if there's any messages to go out from the club, I can do that at the same time. Then I'm going to sit in the stand, in amongst you all, beside the people I've always sat beside, and I have the same experience, and hear and see and feel what's going on. I just think that makes it more real. If this is a supporter director, you need to be right in touch with supporters, and what better way than sitting amongst them and talking to them before and during the game. So that's how I address it.
Thanks, Paul. Andy?
Pretty much along the same lines. Making yourself available to everybody is probably key to getting people engaged and listen to any concerns that they have. I think in the past this role has been construed sometimes in a different light. It's certainly the case that we do protect the investment that we made at the time of Reclaim the Rovers, but it's more than that, and it's evolved through time, and rightly so. Fans want to be informed. When you're available, especially on match days, then you can converse with them, find out their concerns, and then take that forward. That's not to say that you're going to take forward every gripe, mump and moan, as I'm sure there's probably quite a few of them coming your way, but certainly genuine concerns that the fans have, then interaction with them, especially on match days, the way forward.
Bill?
I think the first thing I'd do is encourage the other directors to communicate a bit better than maybe they have in the past. And that's why the recent Wraith TV interviews with John Sim and Bill Clark, I think, are to be welcomed. And to do small things. I mean, when we had those 200 very early bird season tickets sold, I got in touch with Neil and I said, can you try and make sure the club says thanks to those 200 people? And lo and behold, later on we got the 200, I was one of them, I got an email from Benny thanking us for doing that. Now, that didn't cost the club anything, but it's goodwill. So I think there's a job for the rest of the board to do, as well as the supporter director, along the lines of what the guys have said. I too am worried about whether I'm going to be sitting in the boardroom or sitting in my usual row behind you. And maybe we need to do a bit of both. But I'm also interested in a properly revamped Wraith Forum that has a plan for the period of office of the supporters director that includes better communication, that includes visiting all the constituent groups and talking to them, and includes surgeries, I've described them, to give people the chance to air their views. I think the supporter director's job then is to distill all that information and feed it back, but also to explain other things which perhaps in the past have been left as a mystery. And then of course that's when all sorts of hairs start running. So good communication has been central to everything I've done in my job in the 30 years I worked for Newpie and Unison, and I would bring that to this post.
Okay, David?
I think all of that's right. I think communication is clearly a big issue here, and I would say that what we're talking about here is the disconnect between top level management and the fans who are paying the money to get to the gate. And I would say we could even break that into two facets: the communication between the fans and the supportive director, and that two-way dialogue, and then the next step on the supportive director with the traditional board of directors on there. And I think Bill alluded to it earlier on, it would have been nice to have a meeting with those involved to just get a sense of how much the role entails and how much influence that we can actually have over the board of directors. I mean, we don't really know after meetings how much license that person has got to then go and communicate it, whether it be through a kind of informal means in the ground, or whether it be on forums or through electronic communication. So I think that's a grey area, and I think the person who is appointed here must be strong in that position. I think they've got to set their ground out pretty early with the board of directors to say that, well, we can only do that role if we're given license to be transparent and honest with the people that we are representing. So I think that's important. Secondly, I've been in a lot of meetings, as you guys I'm sure have been in your lives, where all that's really achieved is when the next meeting is going to be. And decisions don't get made necessarily in half an hour or an hour. There needs to be ongoing dialogue between the board of directors. I do it with the kids at school, where we have online communications where they can pretty much post and discuss with me and with their peers in a protected environment, and that's the kind of ongoing dialogue where opinions can be formed and opinions can be discussed before you then get to the meeting, where you can actually make the decision rather than just discuss and not really get anywhere with it. So those would be the two sides of it that I would focus on.
Okay, thanks very much, guys. Anybody got a question from the floor?
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
Just go home now. At the back there?
Can I just expand on that kind of question? In part of a board like this will mean corporate responsibility. There has to be decisions made that you're part of, you're a board member. How do you make sure that you don't just, over the 2 years, slip into just agreeing what the board always agrees and always does? And how do you then properly represent the fans when on occasions that might bring you conflict with other directors? How will you individually manage that?
Okay. Andy, do you want to take that one first?
I don't think there's really much wrong with conflict as such. As we've alluded to previously, I think if you're in that role, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be disagreements at times, which leads to healthy debate. I think as well that the fans or the supporters director on the board are going to take guidance and be aware of what's expected of them via the Wraith Forum. It's been spoken about already that there's a real wealth of talent. The forum has become more and more involved. It's not just an avenue now for fundraising events. It's more focused and it's more centred on what the fans actually want. So, yeah, I mean, certainly you would be taking your guidance from the other members of the Wraith Forum. Yeah.
Okay, Bill?
Well, collective responsibility is a concept I'm familiar with from my trade union background, and it's very, very important. But the supporters director has got a slightly different role to the other directors, I think. It seems to me you can have difficult discussions and disagree and accept the outcome if the lead-in is sufficiently long, if there is planning for difficult decisions being taken. So if there's going to be something taken, you know, if you're going to have a difficult decision to make, you need notice. You don't need it sprung on you, because that's when it gets difficult. And I think if things are planned in the club, both on the forum and in the board, there's more opportunity to have an honest exchange of views in these circumstances, and yes, to disagree. And it's okay to disagree with friends, it's okay to disagree with your partner, you know, and you can survive that.
Okay, thanks, Bill. David?
Yeah, nothing ever comes from mutual agreement. I think we all have a slightly different opinion on things that happen within our club, in our daily lives. You asked the question, how would we deal with it personally? I mean, certainly the 4 years that I've been head of department in quite a very big school, there's daily conflict, there's daily disagreements between colleagues, between pupils, between management, between support staff. That's just daily dose for me. And what I would say is that quite quickly I learned how to mediate those discussions, let's say, arguments maybe, by listening carefully to what people are saying and really taking that on board and really trying to analyse every person's point of view and then trying to form some kind of rational movement forward. Because ultimately you can't please everybody, that's just life. You've got to try and pick the key points, the most important points, and that will fall on the responsibility of that person who's chosen to have that ability to be able to pick out the key parts for Wraith Rovers fans. I go back to how much licence we will have, and as I say, we have to be strong-willed in those discussions with the board of directors, because if we're not, then you can become a bit of a patsy without really being effective in moving the club forward. The other thing is affecting change, and something that keeps coming up is that we want to embrace the change, and we need to be strong, whoever that person is and the group of fans, is that we try and come to a collective agreement and then affect that change for the positive.
Okay, and finally Paul on that one.
Having worked in some of the organisations that I have, I've seen the effect that a lack of corporate responsibility can have. I've seen it destroy companies, basically. So I know how important it is, and as the older I've got, the more important things like integrity and honesty and openness have become to me, much more than position or opinion or professional views, etc. So I think personal qualities are most of the answer to that question. And as I say, the older I get, the more conscious I am of these and the more I look for them in others. And if I don't find them, I call them out because it matters so much to me. So I think my answer to that is a very personal one. I can't prove that to you. I'd ask you to trust me on it because I think it comes from within.
Okay, that's great. We had another email in asking about the experience of fans who don't live local, and this person felt that the club didn't do much to support or to promote the club to those who aren't in the surrounding areas in terms of ticket offers and deals and stuff are only really available from Starks Park rather than being available elsewhere. So the question they had was, what will you do to improve the experience and connection with the club for those who don't necessarily live in the local sort of Kirkcaldy area? Bill, would you want to go first on that one?
Well, I should have the model answer, having lived in London for 30 years and now living in Edinburgh, but I'm not sure if I do. I think it's back to good communication. I mean, you know, when the early season ticket offer came in, I mean, I just emailed the office and said, if I put the money in the account, will you put a season aside for me? And that's what they did. But I had to ask. The offer wasn't made initially, and so I guess it's about when the club is bringing out offers, it's about remembering that our fan base goes way beyond Kirkcaldy. I mean, whenever I get a lift back from the match, there's a stream of cars going out the Queensferry passageway, because a lot of our support doesn't live in Kirkcaldy. One idea I've had is to organise maybe a kind of Rovers Down South Former Players Association event in Edinburgh, where, if the stats are to be believed, we have about 70 season ticket holders and 140 or so people on our database who are based in Edinburgh. And there will be other parts of Fife, no doubt, where we could think about similar initiatives. So I think it's about remembering that the support goes way beyond Kirkcaldy and factoring that in to every initiative the club takes.
Okay, David on that one?
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of questions I would ask in response to that, the query, would be how do we define local? I think that would be a discussion. And then research the problem and really find out how many people we're talking about here. We would establish how big the problem is or how small it is. I'm with Bill. I live in Edinburgh. It's not cheap to live in Edinburgh. A home day is an away day, and it's days that I always look forward to, clearly. But yes, there's a cost implication of coming to Starks Park every Saturday, every second Saturday. If we'd established that there was a genuine desire for this, then we would potentially look into travel incentives, potentially tying in rail cards or reduced prices, or potentially 3 tickets for the price of 2 kind of thing. But I would say you establish where there is a real problem before you then invest lots and lots of time finding solutions, and then you also then have to define where the line is, because we can't pay for aeroplanes up from London every second Saturday to get somebody into the ground. So I think there's more to be asked. I think there would be much more discussion and research before we give a definitive answer to that.
Okay, Paul on that one?
Yeah, I'm with David a bit. I need to understand the problem a wee bit more before we could pick a solution or a range of solutions. I think a lot of it comes down to communication. Again, I mean, it's an easy answer, but you need to find out how it affects people, what they want to do, what they're trying to do, and what they've been frustrated in doing, and then find ways of getting back to try and support them to do it. The club has finite resources and a lot of volunteers giving up their time for no reward. So you can't do everything you'd like to do. You have to do the best you can do, which takes me back to the point I was making about working with new and maybe different volunteer groups. Maybe this is a group, I hesitate to steal the title Rovers Down South, but Rovers in Angus or Rovers in Central or that kind of thing, and get a group of these people together to really define the issue, as David said, and define what solutions might look like, and then bring them back into the club for consideration.
Thanks, Paul. And Andy on that one?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that's been said so far. I think the club certainly missed a trick years ago, post Coca-Cola Cup win. I think that was a time then that we should have targeted areas out with Kirkcaldy, certainly the Glenrothes area, where there's a huge footfall of potential Wraith Rovers supporters there. We should have been taking that cup around the schools. It should have just been, anywhere that would have us. We should have been in there and inspiring youngsters to perhaps become more involved then. It's difficult, as we've said, although initiatives have been tried. A couple of seasons ago we ran the free bus service from Glenrothes for supporters up there to get down to match days. It was a subsidised bus in the hope that perhaps others would like to come along to the ground, but as it transpired it was all season ticket holders and guys that were coming down anyway. But we've got to try these kind of things. I think the staff in the office work incredibly hard. There's not a huge amount of people down there processing season ticket requests. If we had a bigger staff, we could do a whole lot more if we had the resources. But yeah, certainly things need done. Things have been tried, and we just need to build on that.
Any more questions from the audience?
Yeah, with the club having recently moved from a situation where it was under shared and stable ownership to having one large shareholder and lots of small shareholders, how would you each approach that and ensure that the voices of all shareholders is heard, but particularly that the voice of the supporter shareholding isn't sidelined?
Okay, David, you're first
I think it's quite similar to the first question, and those discussions have to happen once we've established who's going to go into that role, the support that each other we might be able to give each other, and then those discussions with the board of directors and potentially John Sim as well. I mean, the truth is that we have a current setup that is not going to change overnight. Certainly going from the interview about the financial state of things, it doesn't sound particularly optimistic in terms of the numbers, although John himself is much more positive that it's a manageable situation. I've heard people saying that in the end we want it to be a supporters club where supporters club complete ownership. The current model doesn't work because we're losing too much money, so that money has to come from somewhere. So if we don't have investors that are putting in that money, then we're constantly working with debt that's growing every year. So I think we've got to be very careful about the steps that are taken towards maybe that idealistic end point where we can have a bigger stake in the club. But in terms of influence, it comes down to people. It comes down to those discussions. It comes down to us being strong and letting the board of directors know that this role has to be a respected role, and in the end it's a redundant role unless we are listened to and some of the actions that we put forward are actually taken into account and happen. So I think that happens initially behind the scenes, and we set the scene, and then hopefully we can be in a position to make sure that some of the initiatives that come through from the fans body actually come to fruition.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, as I said in my comments, the frustration for me was not being able to test the board before we came here tonight, or even before I wrote my statement, to find out how far they were going to go. I'll give you a parallel. In my current employment, we're looking at establishing a youth forum, and I'm trying to say to the board, well, I am saying to the board, don't do this if you're not going to listen. Don't do this if you're not going to do something with the information you get from this, because all you'll do is disengage, disenfranchise, and it'll be another one that they've seen before and it'll just die. I would say the same to the board here. Don't do this unless you're going to listen. Don't get into this unless you're going to do something about it. I think that's the whole ethos of this role, and every strand that comes from this role, whether it be share investment, ownership of the club, future investment, maintenance, anything that we've got to do here needs that board to be acting as one and each member to be an equal. If we're not going to be an equal, then it's not going to work. So I've got some questions for the board on that.
Okay, Andy?
Yeah, it was a pretty difficult situation that came along. I mean, traditionally the trust had it enshrined that that no one person would actually, amass enough shares as become the owner of the club. I think at that time there wasn't really an option the way it was explained to us. It was either this way, or there was a real danger of the club folding. It's very difficult. I would like to hope that whoever gets this position on the board will be treated as an equal. We will have a vote. I think the current owner is a Wraith man. I think his heart's in the right place. He has vision. He's progressing with the synthetic pitch. He has plans to develop other parts of the stadium, but that could easily change. And I think we've got to be aware that may happen. So we've really just got to keep working away, putting forward the plans in action, and then hopefully gain that respect, and hopefully just work together as a team and as a board for the benefit of the club.
Okay, and finally Bill on that one.
I think we have to find out what the most effective way of utilising the funds that supporters raise. What is the best way of using it? Is it shares? Is it something else? Is it straight donations or whatever? And if I heard James correctly at the Trust AGM earlier on, we're not quite sure yet what the most effective thing is for the supporters groups to do, but that's something that we should be working out and have as a backstop, and be, once we decide what it is, pursue it. But I think the other thing is more at a kind of human level, and that's for the supporters organisation, the supporter director, the Wraith Forum, and our team of volunteers, is to make themselves indispensable to this football club, so that our views are just as important. Our views, our time, our energy is just as important as the money put in by John Sim. Because we are this football club. We always have been. Football clubs are supporters, with the occasional players coming through, managers coming through, and indeed directors coming through. So I think it's a sort of combination of those two things. I know that maybe sounds a bit airy-fairy, but I think that's probably where we are at the moment. But I sense that there's a willingness amongst board members just now to accept volunteers and expertise in a way that probably wasn't the case in the not too distant past.
Okay, I've got another question online that someone was asking, how will you keep us up to date on what is happening? And a follow on from that, are you planning to use social media to do that? Paul, do you want to go first on that?
Yeah, that's a big one for me. I've covered that a couple of times. So keeping informed and keeping in touch. Saturdays in the stand, more use of social media, more use of Wraith TV. I like Wraith TV, again, not just because Neil's there, but I think it works. I think Davey and Neil and whoever else is involved do a great job, and it hits the right spot. The tone's right, the message is right, and I know they get lots of views, so why not make more use of that? And what more could we do with Wraith TV? You could be filming interviews, you could be filming the supporter director once a week and sticking it on the website. You could be doing vox pops with the supporters, you could be putting them on the website. You can use apps, social media that exists. You can revamp the forum, as Bill said. There's lots you can do, lots you could do. It all comes down to time and priority. For me, that connection with people, being in HR, people's my thing. This club will be nothing without people. Bill just said it's about supporters. Supporters are the club. So that's a really important thing for me. I don't have the answer yet, back to how much headroom will we get, but that'll be a big focus for me.
Okay, Andy?
I would agree with that, yeah. Social media and basically just being available on a match day. If you're in the south stand or in the main stand, if you're doing the rounds as we should be doing, then people can identify with you, come and speak to you. You could explain any concerns that they may have. Social media, Wraith TV has been mentioned. I know that the Five Flyers do a regular phone-in with the manager. Some of them we could perhaps look at. I'm not technically minded in any way, so I'd have to, leave that to the guys that have got the technical expertise. But certainly, making yourself available on a match day, I think, first point is crucial. Getting to know people, going around the different groups, and basically just talking to anybody that may have a concern.
Okay, Bill?
I think, after, when decisions are taken, and I don't know what the frequency of board meetings is or anything like that, but when these things take place, one of the jobs for the supporter director, I think, is to communicate using all the tools available what has just happened, to get the official version out. Because if you don't get the official version out, 57 other versions get out, and then you've got a bigger problem to deal with. So people have talked about the priorities. The absolute priority in the 12, 24 hours after an event, after a decision, is getting that information out. And I did that all the time in the unit, and it saved us an awful lot of hassle. I think the new director is going to have to be clear about what is confidential and what isn't, and perhaps have to challenge what is currently accepted as being confidential, because it may just be about getting over that hurdle of being a bit more open and transparent about what you're doing. Social media, we definitely need to embrace it, but we also have to have a sense of perspective. There's a thing called the Pareto effect that people refer to in management sometimes, which is the 80-20. And if you spend 80% of your time worrying about what 20% of your supporters are biting your ear about and forget the other 80%, your organisation goes down the tube. So I think it's about getting the right balance with what my mate calls face tube or face twit. It's got to be used, but we're not going to have individual responses. I think we should have collective responses when people raise difficult issues.
Okay, and David,
It's
on that one?
mostly been said. What I would say is, in terms of social media, I think the club actually makes pretty good use of Twitter and the website. I think if you subscribe to Twitter and you subscribe to the various Reef Rovers channels, then that works pretty well. The news is pretty instant, and then that's reflected on the website. Of course, that doesn't cover everybody, and I do think there are social media avenues for younger people that we really do need to explore. When we make big signings, then we need to be posting in a very visual, interactive way, so that the younger people can directly interact with that. Because I mean, 12-year-old to 18-year-olds don't really use Facebook, Twitter anymore. They're much more focused on the more visual apps that are out there. So I think we need to shift slightly towards that to engage our young people. A lot of us keep saying the South Stand and interacting with our supporters in the South Stand. Do you know what? We fans are the absolute lifeblood of this club, and interacting with fans away from home, where there are smaller numbers and you really can have a dialogue in that situation, is I think would be a healthy time to have kind of informal discussions and feedback with that. Potentially a supporter director section in the weekly, I don't know what we call it, is it the briefing or the bulletin that comes out on a Friday or a Thursday? So maybe a little section in there if there's anything that's worth seeing coming from the supporter director, then a slot in that bulletin to just to establish what the person is doing, and if there's any news or impact that the supporters have had, to make that very recognised and clear to the entire database of fans. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. I think we've probably got time for maybe one or two more questions. John? Just decide who wants to go.
I think one of the good initiatives that's come out recently is the Rory Club. So I would just like to know if the candidates have got any initiative that they would really like to run with.
So Andy, you want to start on that one?
Yeah, I mean the Rory Club it's one of the success stories of recent times, generating a lot of interest with the future season ticket holders. I have a personal input in as much that I have been Rory Rover on many occasions. And at this time of year, wearing that suit, it's bloody hot, let me tell you. But no, you're right. I mean, the Rory Club is a great example of what can be achieved, and it's one of the great success stories of the club. I'll refer again to the 200 Club. That again is from a personal point of view, is another success story. With the limited resources that we've got, we do pretty well. Others do well also. The South Stand concourse, not that long ago, you'd be coming into the South Stand and be faced with grey breeze block, not very imaginative. We now have the televisions up on the walls. We've got the sort of history boards as well, and various posters. Doesn't make any difference to how the team play, but it certainly makes a difference to fans that are coming in, and it takes a wee bit away from, and it just shows us, something that's taken place, and is going to enhance the club. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Bill?
Well, one of the things that I put in my 500-word statement was the idea of developing a supporters for the future scheme, and I said concentrating on attendance, not price. And so I think there's a bit of a work to be done with the Rory Club to see about how we actually move to the next stage, to move from being a Rory Club member, becoming a wee bit older, and then going through a transition to become a supporter, and indeed then a paying supporter. And I think we need to sit down and talk about all of that. And if we've got evidence that somebody's been in the Rory Club for 5 or 6 years, they become, maybe they're then 12, what happens at that stage? How do we mark it? Do we give them a free season ticket for 4 years because they've had this 6 years behind them, or what have you? But it's like you say, go away and talk to the people who are practicing these things, working on these things, and come with solutions for the next stage. The other thing that I think could be built on is a scheme that I started 10 years ago, which we call a kids-sponsored ticket scheme. And I organised it purely out of guilt, because some of you will probably remember that I won 10,000 on Rory's Lotto in 2008. And the club's probably had all the bloody money back, you know. But what I did at that stage was put aside some money that allowed kids nominated by charities or community groups to come, who wouldn't ordinarily be able to get to a game, to come with a carer. And the club gives them the programme, gives them £2.50 or £3, I think it is, so they can, you know, get something at the catering outlets. And we've built that up, and there's probably hundreds of kids have gone through that. But we've not kind of plugged it in a big style, because you don't want to stigmatise the people that are benefiting from it. But I'm sure we could build on that as well, both in terms of the people who contribute the money to pay for the tickets, and also the range of community groups that are currently involved, because at the moment it's only about half a dozen, 10 or so. And just while I see them there and I think about it, we also had the idea of expanding that at the other end of the generation.
I'll just keen to give everybody a chance. David, on that one?
Yeah, I think lots of good points there. In terms of Rory Club, I think there's lots of good work going on, and some of the stuff at half-time, certainly the first portion of half-time is good for the kids. I think the whole half-time situation is something that I do have a bit of an issue with typically across the country. Those of you who've gone the length and breadth, half-times are pretty boring typically across the nation, and unless you're needing the toilet or you're desperate for your pie, then I think there is an opportunity there to entertain. And again, I go back to the kids on this to try and I go back to my time, in fact, of being in the railway stand, and the penalty competition was something that we all talked about at school, and I always remember scoring 3 and getting through, and 3 and getting through, and then missing my final 1 and going out in the final. And it was something that was a bit of buzz at school. I think you could develop that even further though, because you could maybe involve an adult-child competition where you and your dad or mum are playing against other parents, or just involve some of the adult fans in a competition as well, or alternate it, just to get people kind of involved, something for them to watch, something for them to have a bit of a laugh at and enjoy during that half-time break, because that half-time break is quite a stale part of the game. I've written down legends here. I've seen some of our kind of boyhood legends coming back to the club is great for us, and they get a wee round of applause and they pick up the number, etc. And that's fine, but what's the connection with our young people there? How much do they really know about the legends that are coming back? I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think maybe a bit more of diversity and filling the half-time with lots of little activities just might be enough to keep the interest levels up for some of the kids and adults who start to wander a little bit. So I think there's an opportunity for a lot of brainstorming in there, and a lot of ideas that would come from the fans community that we could try. You can't lose, I think, in that sense.
Okay, Paul?
One thing I know in business now is that young people don't think like I do. So in business I need to try and recruit people in the way that they want to be recruited, and present our organisation in the way that they would want to join, rather than the way I think is the best way to do it. So the same applies here. I don't have any great ideas right now tonight. Some of David's stuff's quite good. So I don't have any great ideas, but 2 things I do know. The best way to achieve success is to surround yourself with good people. So back to talking to people and getting the interested groups together. And secondly, to build on the point I made, the best people to tell you how to move this thing on are the young people themselves. So get to them and sit down with them and say, what is it? What is next? What would you like to see? Do you want to be the big Rory Club, or what's bigger than a lion? A big lion. I don't know the answer, but I'd find it by talking.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question, if it's a fairly brief from everybody asking and answering. John?
I think we'll get 4 different answers for this one. Who's your favourite Rovers player you've seen play? And the wrong answer is Joe Carley.
Okay, Bill, you're first in this one.
Brian Cooper.
Brian Cooper. David?
Scott Thompson.
Which one?
Which one?
Paul?
Benny Maguire.
And Andy?
Craig Brewster for me.
And Colin Cameron from Even or Not Starting. Okay, that's been brilliant. Thank you very much for all your questions. What I'd like to do is just give the guys a chance to sum up and cover anything, sum up what, I guess, why they should be the director or anything they've not touched on so far. I'm going to be quite strict here. It is 2 minutes, guys, and we drew lots earlier on for who's going to go first. So we're going to start with Bill. So if you could give us your 2 minutes.
Well, because I've overrun occasionally, I'll try and do it very quickly. The big thing for me that's come out of this discussion is really the scope for making more out of our supporter volunteers, never mind supporter directors. And so if I'm lucky enough to win, that is definitely something that's going to be up there for me. Beyond that, I would just like to thank you all for coming, and to thank Stephen for chairing it, and to thank the other 3 candidates. And I think this has been a great evening for Raith Rovers and Raith Rovers supporters. I think there's a little bit of a job to be done reviewing the election process itself. The most obvious one being why we haven't Hustings when a lot of people could have already cast their votes. We were asking ourselves that. And one final thing, one pledge from me, I'm going to support whoever wins. And if I win, I'm going to be working with these 3 guys and lots of people in this room as well, in the interests of Raith Rovers.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Paul?
So I'm local, I'm committed, I've got good business and people experience, and like you, I'm a supporter. I want the supporters to tell me what matters to them, and I want the club to listen carefully and seek solutions. I want to help the supporters understand more about what it takes to run the club and why some decisions have to be made. I want to increase engagement and commitment to the club by representing all the supporters in the boardroom and making sure the club talks more freely with them at every other interaction. I want to find new ways of working with new people to do new things in the latest new chapter for the Rovers. And I want the club to be even more involved in the community and to harness the goodwill which exists in the core support, and by doing so, expand the core support. I want more diversity in the ground and in the club, and with all aspects of our community properly represented. I want to be sitting with you as we thrash East Fife 6-0 at home, but I'll be commiserating with you if we get beat by Montrose. Above all else, I want us to get back to roaring back again this time. I'd be very grateful if you'd give me your support. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Andy?
Yeah, I'll be brief as well. Thank you to Stephen for chairing the meeting, and to the Raith Trust for organising and facilitating the election process. I think it's encouraging that there's 4 candidates standing this time, the largest amount ever. I think it's encouraging as well that there's such a large turnout for this Hustings event. As I said before, I spend a lot of my time down here just pottering about and helping out wherever I can. And there's such a huge areas of work that needs attention. And with the talent that we have within this club, we could make a real positive difference. I tend to find that I'm more on the practical side of things. I'm more hands-on. I enjoy getting my hands dirty. I enjoy getting mucked in. But in my time that I've been involved with Raith Rovers, there's a wealth of talent, not just sitting up here, but elsewhere. So I hope I'm successful. I hope I can carry things forward. We'll find out soon enough. If I'm lucky, then I will do my best to represent the fan base and represent the club. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And finally, David.
I'll echo the thanks to all you guys for coming out tonight and for the organisation of this. I really believe that, but the organisation, the communicational managerial skills that could really benefit this club and the community that surrounds it. For it all to work though, the lines of communication, they have to be open, robust and reliable. Fans must have faith in this system or else it just breaks and becomes redundant. In any kind of middle management role, as I would see it, listening to those around and being open to opinions and ideas is integral to gaining the respect and trust of those around you and or those around the person that's appointed. If appointed, I would go into the role with a bit of a fresh outlook that's not bound or influenced by previous events or people. Yes, I'm a little bit young, potentially, but I think I would come with a little bit of new perspective and a new angle to it, coming from a slightly different generation, and not unwilling to question the rationale for things that we do just because that's the way we've always done it, which is one of my pet hates. I take it on with enthusiasm, commitment and professionalism, and I think I would do you, the rest of our fans and the club proud. I think our kids need to be proud to be a Rover, not embarrassed to be a Rover. I want to see Rover strips going about Kirkcaldy. I want to see Rover strips in the wider bits of the community where they can be proud to wear it and they don't feel forced to wear a Man United strip or a Celtic strip. I think we need to move beyond that. My favourite word to the boys, the football team that I'm in charge of, is being brave. Being brave on the pitch, being brave off the pitch, being brave as a unit and as a collective group, and I think that applies to both our group on the pitch, where we could have been a bit braver this season in some games, and I think it applies to the fans and to the person who takes on this role, is to be brave and strong and support the community. So thank you again for giving me this time to speak.
Okay. Final thing, I'd like to echo the thanks of everybody for coming along. It's been a great turnout, and I'd like to thank the guys for giving up their time to come along and speak to us. I mean, it's great to have 4 candidates, and particularly after tonight, I think it's great to have 4 passionate Rovers fans and such high calibre candidates as well. So it's not an easy choice, but I think it's a good choice we've got in front of us. Someone did say earlier on that children are the future. If I need a final plug for, we've got Rory footballs at the back there that are £10. All the money from that, these are rewards that have been left over from the Rory Club. So all the money from that will go back into the Rory Club for next season. So that's my personal plug there. So thanks everybody for coming, and again just a round of applause for the guys who started.